Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is Ophola from the Opholamedia podcast. Today, we are hosting our second episode of the Opholamedia podcast. So tonight, I'm chilling with a number of gentlemen that I've known for quite some time. We'll be discussing a number of topics. For instance, a few weeks ago in South Africa, we had the Youth Day. So now we'll be talking about the Youth Day, how it came about, and what the gentlemen think of it, and the current space that we're in at the moment. And then there was also a soundtrack that is very related to that Youth Day in South Africa, which is called Sarafina, from the film Sarafina. So now we'll also discussing our favorite soundtracks that you might have liked from any movie that they have watched before. Okay, so the gentlemen will start by introducing themselves, starting with Aquila, then Xhanti, and then Mr. Saida. So Mr. Aquila, can you take over?
Hi, Ophola. Hi, gentlemen. I hope you guys have been doing well during these tough times of this COVID pandemic. Yes, my name is Aquila, and my name is Aquila Hanise, and yeah, I'm from Port Elizabeth, born and raised in PE, and I now currently reside in Cape Town. And yeah, I'm in the IT industry. I've been in IT for the last 14 years. Still going strong. Yes, so that's me.
Okay. Xhanti, can you please follow up?
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Teki. I'm from a very small town called Noport. It's somewhere in the peripheral parts of the Northern Cape. I'm in the local and mainly communication. That's governmental, political. I'm in the youth league. I'm an elder. They call me elder because I've went over the 35 years there.
You are in the border.
So I'm over the border, Chief. I'm over the border. I'm over the border. You must give the machine to young people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm governmentally, I'm a spokesperson to the MEC of Coxa in the province. And then politically, I'm the deputy secretary in the province of the Youth League. Outgone, in fact, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot, Xhanti. Mr. Saida.
All right, thanks, Mr. O, for the opportunity, Tata. It's much appreciated. Just a brief intro about myself. Sandile Mbeki. I'm also from a very small town in the Eastern Cape called E02. I've been around so much that I can't even remember where to start now, but where I am currently, I'm in the retail sector, working as a project manager for one of the retail industries in South Africa. So I've been there for quite some time now, and that's currently where I am.
Thank you. Thank you.
The long and short of it.
Okay, that's fine. That's fantastic. Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much for introducing yourselves to our audience. Okay, so as we said earlier, that we're gonna be discussing a number of issues. One of the most, what can I call it, events that happened in the past in South Africa. In 1976, we had a youth day. We had a youth uprising, not a youth day, a youth uprising, where school kids and young learners were involved in protests, protesting against the government. So now I would like you gentlemen to tell me, like, what do you think led to that uprising in 1976, the issues that made it to arise, and also the mindset of the current youth in South Africa these days. How is it similar or different to that one of 1976? And also for now, the third item, also holistically looking at it all, do you think we have reaped the rewards from the protests in 1976? Can you take it away, Mr. Aquila?
Yes. Yeah. The question is you ask a lot of questions there. I'm going to try to answer all of them as much as I can. So, what led to the uprising? So, there were many factors. One was the brutality of the system, the apartheid system, against our people as a whole. People were being killed. People were oppressed. There was also the fact that the apartheid system wanted our people to wanted Afrikaans to be the language of teaching at school, therefore oppressing our people even further. And therefore oppressing our people even further, and then ensuring that our people continue to be enslaved. They lose ubuntu babo. Yeah, those are the biggest reasons, and that led to our people in the main students, scholars, organizing themselves in order to protest against the system and march against the system. So in the main, those are the reasons, and people decided to organize themselves and actually go out and fight against the system.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Quills. Mr. Xhanti?
Yeah. I think in our discussion that we're having, okay, let me first and foremost welcome this opportunity. It's very important for young people every now and then, people of our generation will engage on these important issues. And I want to thank you first and foremost for the platform that you've created, and also for the participants in the discussion. Look, in our discussions today, we will find confluences. Sawuthetha simane sivana apha encokweni, uyaqonda, because sithetha ngento esiyaziyo, uyaqonda, okanye siyivileyo at the bare least, at the bare minimum, uyaqonda. So most critical to what led to the 1976 uprising is the very oppressive white minority regime in place to take care or cater for only one certain section of society in exclusion of the other. Because the enactment of the Afrikaner clause that students in black schools ought to be taught in Afrikaans is based on a non-consultative basis. You guys, you have to be taught in Afrikaans, regardless of the fact that you understand Afrikaans or not. But the basis is that is the imposition without consultation, unlike the democratic dispensation that we're in now. So what led to that is the fact that students refused. They said, but we can't be taught in Afrikaans. We can't be taught in Afrikaans. We don't even understand this Afrikaans. That's your language. Why impose it to us? So that was in the main, the core reason for the uprising of saying that we defy. And the other historical issue that we need to correct is that the 1976 uprising did not only happen in Soweto. There were pockets of it elsewhere in the country where people were defying the same sentiment that the government wanted to impose by saying that we do not want Afrikaans, we won't be taught in Afrikaans, and we'll protest towards that. So in my view, is that that's what led, in essence, to the student uprising. Like I said to you before engaging, that we'll find confluences and we'll intertwine elsewhere how we articulate, because it's not something that others were in the moon and here on earth. It's something that happened. It's a historical fact and so on. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, X. Yes, Mr. Seda, what is your take on this issue that we are discussing?
All right, no, thanks, all. I mean, I couldn't agree more with Quills and Xhanti. I mean, I share the same sentiments with what they're saying in terms of like what led to the uprisings of 1976. And I think what they're raising is actually the main factors in terms of what really led to those moments for those kids to actually stand up and said, enough is enough. We won't take this nonsense of the white minority enforcing us to actually study in Afrikaans and let Afrikaans be a way of medium or a medium of communication, if you want to put it that way. So they finally got together. If I'm not mistaken, the events leading to the 16th of June, they actually got together. I think it was the 13th of June, where there was about 500 students that came together. I think the idea was for them to meet up in Orlando Donaldson Stadium in Soweto to say, okay, we need to march and we need to take the government on, and we need to get them to listen to our voice. As we all know, I mean, we didn't have a voice prior 1976 or prior those uprisings. So the whole point of them meeting was to actually take their grievances to the Department of Bantu Education to say, we're not going to take this. You know, there is no way, I mean, out of all the 11 official languages that we have, you're going to choose your language, which is from a minority group, to say everybody in this country must actually go with Afrikaans as a medium of instruction. So I'm just adding on basically onto what the guys have said. So from my view, that's how this whole thing started.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Seda. Okay, then guys, for some of you who may not know, in South Africa, there was Bantu education, as the guys did discuss. So with Bantu education, people were confined that you cannot study in a certain field. If you are a person, if you are a person of color, or you can only study this course, or you can only practice in this career path. So that was the whole Bantu education system, meaning that not everybody got equal opportunities in the country to study or practice whatever they wanted to do because of the color of their skin. Okay, so now the events that had occurred after that, there was still some apartheid, as we know. The school system was not open for everybody to do what they wanted. Okay, so as we know that in the Freedom Charter, it was specified that there shall be free education for all. But unfortunately, that was not being practiced in South Africa. So now with that in mind, that led us to many years of protest in institutions, especially after we voted in South Africa and there was a release of the political prisoners in 1990. So now what happened after that, everybody now was allowed to go to these institutions and study what they wanted. But unfortunately, we still had the legacy issue of the parents of the kids that were not allowed to go to varsities, not being able to afford education for their children because it was still not free in the country. So now this led to many strikes across different institutions during our time as students as well. We remember there would be a strike here in UWC, there would be a strike somewhere in UKZN, there would be a strike somewhere, but these strikes were not coordinated. So after the strikes were coordinated, it brought us to another important event that happened in our history in the education sector in South Africa, which is what happened for Fees Must Fall. So, gentlemen, can you please tell me about the events that led to Fees Must Fall, how it came about, and how did it end up being Fees Must Fall? Xhanti?
No, it's fine. Maybe before we get there,
Yeah.
maybe before we get to the issue of Fees Must Fall, we need to interrogate. We need to interrogate the the importance of the commitment that was made by the ANC, amongst others, in relation to the issue related to free education. When the African National Congress and the Indian Congress and the Colored People Congress met in Cape Town in 1955 to draft the Freedom Charter. It was the Congress of the people, né? Meaning that if you can read the Freedom Charter and you align it to the Constitution, you can see there's a semblance of sorts. There's a correlation of sorts in relation to housing, peace for all, and basic human rights. Now, when the Freedom Charter said there must be free education, it was not met because it saw the inequalities and the undue alignment of privileges that were only given to certain sectors of society, including white. You see, now, when the Freedom Charter said there must be free education, it meant that every person in South Africa must be able to go to institutions of higher learning and receive the education that they ought to receive, regardless of the color, race, creed. You see, now, being mindful of that, fast forward into the new democratic dispensation, we get challenges. Uffman said there is a missing middle. You are too rich to access the government provisions in relation to funding, but you are too poor also to afford on your own. You see, now, in actual sense, what the institutions are doing, in fact, now in retrospect, every year there's an annual increase, which what the fees must fall derives from. Every year there is an annual increase to say that we are increasing with so much percentage, but there is much dropouts because why? They cannot keep up with the financial demand that the institution wants. They're gone. So that's what led to the issue of fees must fall, to say that away and to hell with these things of fee increases in an unequal society. South Africa is unequal. Just a typical example where you gentlemen stay in Cape Town. When I go to Cape Town for other things on weekends, then come back. But you drive on the N2 highway, you've got abject poverty on one side and then overt opulence in the other side, divided only by the national road, N2. You see, so those inequalities are real. And those inequalities, that's what was a springboard that made students to say, but we can't keep up. We have to say that but these fees must fall. Free education was guaranteed to us by the ANC government in power today. So why can't we have free education? And then there was, I think the aftermath of it was that there was a whole commission set up, suspension for first year students, that but they cannot pay for their fees. But reality is that on the last point, on this matter, when I observe, is the fact that the genesis of fees must fall is at the crux of it is the issue that students could not have kept up with the annual increase that institutions of higher learning were making, and given the societal challenges that we face as a country of inequality. Yeah, that's the issue.
Okay, yeah. Well said, Mr. Saida.
Well said, Xhanti. And I'm also going to tie it as well, the whole Freedom Charter thing and linking it to fees must fall. As far as I'm concerned, I think the whole fees must fall thing, it was just a continuation really of the Freedom Charter that was drafted, as Xhanti mentioned. And within that Freedom Charter, I mean, there was a statement there amongst many of the statements that were listed in that Freedom Charter, which said that the people shall govern. And one of them was, I want to read it actually, I want to quote it, which said, free and compulsory education, irrespective of color, race or nationality. So that's, to me, that's why I'm saying the whole fees must fall thing. It's just a continuation, it's a link. There's a strong link between it and the Freedom Charter that was drafted, which was a list of demands that were presented by the allies that Xhanti mentioned. And to that, I mean, we've seen before Fees Must Fall came about, we've seen the plight of students of color struggling to be accepted in these institutions of learning, and because the tuition fees were high. And some of them, you know, they just couldn't afford to get into those institutions. So what about them? You know, and now if you take it back to exactly how it's linked to the Freedom Charter, so that means that they were not considered by those institutions. And it got to a point where the students said, okay, you know, we're gonna take it on. So we're gonna march, we're gonna go out in the streets, and we're gonna do what we need to do to be heard. Hence, then we saw that whole movement coming about, and students taking it upon themselves, going out and protesting with the placards, Fees Must Fall, and hence the hashtag that also came about. So, and on that, I think we must also give credit to, there were a lot of other students that don't get mentioned when we talk about the Fees Must Fall, and you get to hear of names like you get to hear names of the lady Fasiha Hassan, I think is the name. But there were many others that were actually instrumental and were fighting. And some of them actually even went to prison and they got arrested. Some of them served 5 years, you know, because they actually stood up. They stood up to the very same government, if you want to put it that was supposed to actually take the fight for them. You know, I don't think it was actually the responsibility of the students to actually go out there and point it out to the government. The government knew already. So it's, for me, that's where I find it, you know, there's it's a talking point, if you can call it that. But it's funny because we're talking about the June 16 uprising, which was taken on by the students. The same thing with Fees Must Fall was taken on by the students, which is something that was, in my personal opinion, the government should actually have taken that on for the students.
Okay, cool. Your take, Mr. Quills?
Yeah, this is quite an important thing that we touch on of Fees Must Fall. When you were asking your question, when you came up with this question, you mentioned that this is something that had been happening for many years. Because I remember actually when we were students, we protested against excessive fees. The fact that education was only was excluding Black people, and it was only for the money, the rich, and in South Africa's context, the white people. And even before my time, Saida's time, before him, there were other Black people that we had been protesting for many years since democracy, the democratic era of South Africa. It had been happening for many years. And yeah, and it culminated into the Fees Must Fall movement, which was the biggest protest about fees, and yeah, this is something that's touched many of us before us as well. So what led to it was purely that the exclusion of Black people in the education system.
100%.
Now, who mentioned something also very important, that it's almost and the husband can use that it's for it to be the very same stage SET the government that came up with or was part of putting together the Freedom Charter. To have had taken such a long time to listen to the people when people have been crying out for free education. It's quite ironic that up until this day, started free education. And I think it's important that the state continues to look at ways of ensuring that education is accessible to people. It's not used as a tool to suppress abantu bethu. And it is the same education amongst all of us. Okay, we can take you to school, but your education is a bit different. I finally yeah, those were the reasons that fees must fall came about, and those reasons still exist now. I mean that many of us are still excluded from the education system, which is the key to a better life, a better future.
Thank you, Mr. Cool. Any final takes on this subject? Yeah.
Sorry, Teddy, man. It's just a funny observation. You know, when we were talking, and then Quills, I saw young Quills in the background showing up, we talk about young minds.
It pops up.
This guy pops up. Actually, I wanted to actually apologize about that. Can't just get that caught in the conversation. Like he is what you could die.
Okay.
Okay, I know. I guess. Okay, gentlemen, any final takes on this matter of the Youth Day and also the Fees Must Fall events before we can move on to the next item on the agenda?
If I can ask, I'm gonna respond by asking a question, and especially with the Fees Must Fall movement, do we amongst us? I mean, amongst us as we're talking here now, do we think it's actually had any positive impact? I don't know if any of you guys have chatted with students, or maybe with guys that were students at the time when Fees Must Fall movement came about, that are still in varsity now, if maybe they've actually seen any benefit as a result of Fees Must Fall.
Okay, if I may. Okay, being someone who's in touch with the youth culture, so I do get to have discussions with some of these young fellows and young ladies about how this whole thing has played out. It seems like now, unlike before, you will be possibly given an opportunity if you do qualify and also did apply a bit early. You will be given an opportunity to study what you want to study. But now I think the requirement is that you need to pass all your subjects so that you do not slow the others down, you see. So that's what I understand from it. But then if you do not make it, I think maybe there might also be some financial impact. I'm not 100% sure about that part. But I know if they want to accept you, you do get to study for what you want. But depending on how early did you apply and all those things, you know, I don't know if somebody else has another take on this.
Yeah. Look, we'll share notes, we'll compare notes, because I've got a personal friend of mine, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me sharing this thing. He dropped everything. He was a public servant. He dropped everything. He went back to school. And his name is Hanise Mabas. He's doing mining engineering at UJ. He paid close to 40,000.
Oh.
Yeah. He paid close to 40,000. So I understand the modalities that government wants to bring I also align my view to what Aquila was saying earlier on, that we ought to find a way how we best align this thing so this thing can work. You see. So this thing can work because you see that government planning cycle cannot happen outside the realities that we find ourselves in. You see, it must be able to accommodate that. And with all the regulations in place to monitor that, the ultimate outcome is that there must be an impact that is going to be made to the ordinary child. You see, outside the planning cycle of an air-conditioned room in Pitor, outside that, it has to have an effect that whatever government is planning in relation to access to tertiary institutions ought to resonate within the basics, with the ordinary masses of our people. You see, modalities, of course, they can be perfected over time, but the ultimate end is that the ordinary child must be able to access that. You see, so that's my take on this issue. You see.
Okay, so Aluta Kondu are not yet Uhuru. That's what I'm getting from this conversation, is that they are trying to do something, but we are not there yet.
No, for sure. And it's gonna take time. I mean, if we think, if we look at what's happening today, the fact that the news today, we found that the country is, I think it's entered its third quarter. It's the third quarter in a row of decline or recession. It's not easy for the state, and the state needs to continue, though, in those difficult situations. It needs to continue to find ways of making education accessible, because the other thing I think the government hits the state is the fact that education, the cost of education is becoming, is getting higher and higher, and the state doesn't control the cost of education. So if the cost of education goes up and the state cannot make money to overpower that cost, then the problems continue to escalate. So we need to continue to look for ways of ensuring that the cost of education is kept low. Institutions cannot continue to say to go to do a course, go to cost, I think about 40,000. It costs institution and then the state needs to pay for each child going into that classroom 40,000 per year. That does not include residency. It doesn't include food. So zininzi izinto that eziyingxaki. Kodwa into ebalulekileyo is that we continue to find ways of working on these things, and so that we, because all these things hit the black child, you know. So we need to find ways and continue to work on it, so that this is uzofikelela kumntu wonke.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your takes there. Okay, gentlemen, now to the fun part, I guess, of music. So I know all three of you love music very much. I know you cannot go a week without music, even a day without music. Okay, so we said that we'll be discussing soundtracks, maybe that might have made an impact in your life, or that you relate to after watching a certain movie or maybe a series, whatever. So as we said that earlier, in 1976, we had the youth uprising. So now we know one of the soundtracks that was that was produced because of that was Sarafina, for that movie Sarafina. It was a very impactful soundtrack. Like when we were younger, I'm sure you would sing each song word by word, because it was such a nice movie, and it was representing what was happening back in the day, or what was still happening back then. But yeah, it was a very nice soundtrack. I did enjoy that one very much. So starting with you, Mr. Seda, can you think of any soundtrack albums that you might have liked from previous movies? Tell us about the movie and also the soundtrack.
Okay. Just a fun thing that I found when I was just checking on the background, Sarafina as a soundtrack. I found out that the name actually means, I think it's Serafin, which is it's an Italian origin.
Okay.
And basically what the name means is, well, it's a name that's been used by parents considering baby names for girls.
Okay.
And, yeah, and basically what it means is it's an angel of the highest order.
Okay.
So just a bit of fun fact there. So that's
Okay.
what Sarafina means. And I mean, for me, that soundtrack, it speaks volume, and I mean, it's a dramatic story based on a play about teenagers of that time, young people with dreams, and they were struggling against apartheid, but they wanted to be somebody in life. But obviously, because of that era, their dreams, they sort of, they proved difficult to attain, if I may put it that way. So, and I think all of us, I mean, when we watch the movie, we all relate to the story because it speaks of that time and the things that happened during that time, especially to the youth. And for me, if I were to say, how did it actually make me feel? Yeah, I must say, every time when I watch it does revoke some kind of emotions, because of the way it's so dramatic when they're acting, and just the way it's put together. So it just speaks, or it takes me back to that difficult time. But as a soundtrack, the songs that are there, I mean, I've got the soundtrack on my phone, and it's one of those, if you play it, you just start from the top, and you just go all the way to the last song, and it's difficult to skip a song when you play Sarafin.
Yeah, that's true.
It's very difficult, and it tells a very unique story of our past. So that's why I think whenever you play it, it just revokes those emotions. But in terms of how it actually impacted me, it does inspire me, man. I mean, nobody wants to go back to that era. So whenever I listen to it, I mean, I love art, I love culture. So just the way it sang so beautifully, and it just speaks to me, and it does inspire me. The dance moves, the energy, it just says a lot for me.
Okay.
So that's basically it about Sarafina. But I think one of your questions was about soundtracks, like the soundtrack that I like the most. Is difficult. I hate those questions, man. Like when you ask me, like, if I were to choose out of 5 different artists, which one am I gonna go with? It's a difficult one. But in terms of soundtracks, yes, it's tough. But on the same vein, talking about the struggles and the plight of marginalized people. There's a movie called Set It Off. It's an American movie. It's about these women, based on their circumstances. They decide, okay, we're gonna go rob a bank. It's a women cast.
Yeah.
So, and I like it because obviously the songs that are in there, it's also, for me, it just talks about the struggles of those women, and the fact that they did what they did, but of course, obviously you can't justify what they did, but they thought of a plan to go out and do something for themselves, So that's why I'm linking this movie, this Set It Off movie, the soundtrack to that era we're talking about now. So yes, for me, Set It Off speaks volumes for me. And like I said, I mean, it talks about this. I think it's 4 women that just go out there, guns blazing, and they do what they need to do to make things work. And yeah, for me, that's the one that talks a lot to me. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Quills, can you take it on? Yeah. Take it away.
Hey, man. Like I said, it was a very nice movie. I actually also have that movie as one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah.
Like Oseda said, it's difficult to pick one, man. It's very difficult. But if one there's there's a couple of movies that come, okay, this is you would watch it again. Set It Off is one of those movies that you can go back and watch it because of the cast, the touching story of what those women went through, to be forced. I mean, be forced to actually take things to a level by to survive. So that was a nice one. Nice one, Seda. I've got one in the same alley as well. Same time frame. Above the Rim is the name of my favorite soundtrack that I think you guys will all relate. It's the soundtrack is Regulate. That's Warren G and A-Dog.
Yeah.
From Above the Rim. The movie there is it's about. I mean, the setup is of course in America, and the movie is about gangsterism, poverty, drugs, and sport, and how sport can inspire you as a young person to get out of that environment, to get out of that struggle.
Yes.
So-called, being pushed towards looking to gangs for indlela abamaphila ngayo uzokwazi ukufumana ukutya. So yeah, that movie, I think Seda and I have got a similar taste. The funny thing is, ophola was trolling me the other day, but so I think this is a slap back. The only thing I listen to is house music.
Deep house music.
So yeah, that's a movie. I think
that's one.
But I'm sure, gentlemen, if I were to ask Aquila to drop one verse from a hip hop song, a full verse, I'm sure if you listen to music, you do know of a verse from one song. So can you drop that verse? You won't be able to do it. I know.
Windows that inspire us. We don't have to go south.
See, gentlemen, he fails the test. It's okay. We forgive him. We understand him. Okay, your take, X.
Yeah, thanks, One. The one movie I like, it's an old movie, ne? It's a soundtrack out of an old movie, very old movie. I remember my father is from the Eastern Cape. My late father is from the Eastern Cape, and we have family there. So what will happen is that in Opor we're a bit backward, man, with these things of VHS and everything else. So
I know, believe me, I know.
Yeah. So what will happen, Aquila, is that when we go for holidays in Newton, we'll come back with VHS cassettes, ne? And then we'll have to hire the VHS and what do you call this thing? The machine. I don't want to call it. So my aunt gave my father one time this movie, Cry Freedom, né? Which depicts the life of Donald Woods when he was the editor of the Daily Dispatch in the Eastern Cape, in ally to Steve Biko. So long story short, I'm sure we've watched the movie, but long story short, the brutal white government murdered Steve Biko, and then there's a scene there. There's a scene there at the funeral of Steve Biko. The soundtrack plays there, but just that I've got limitation when it comes to singing. I can't sing. I can play. I can't sing. Yeah, he was alright. He was alright. So there's a one scene that shows that so when you analyze that narrative of that song, the lyrics of that song, is at the peak of when black people were saying we're fed up with the white regime. We'll fight these guys. Né? It might not be today that we'll win them, but we'll fight them. So they're actually saying that we're not scared of you. Continue to do what you want to do, but we'll pursue you regardless of that. You see? And I think that song, for many reasons, for me, it resonates, it cut deep, because you see, human spirit is something else upon. You know, conviction is something else. When you're convicted, when you've got a conviction on something, and you start formulating songs, when you start singing about something, it becomes something else, you know. So when people sing and then say, at the time that thing was said, was at the time that the black people were saying, we're throwing over this thing of white minority government. So let it stay the way it is, but we're gonna throw it over. And that's what happened eventually. And just one last thing, observe, on my part. There's a misconception that government, apartheid government, just went to the negotiation table. There's no such. They saw the pressure. The pressure brought them to the negotiation. The pressure of black people saying that, but we can't continue with this nonsense that you guys are doing. The pressure brought them to the negotiating table. So it was never given as apart. We brought them to the table. So that's the issue. Yeah.
Thank you, X. Thank you very much. Yes, that is true. X is right there. It was because of pressure. There was no other way about it, because the country was going to be more chaotic, as it were, because the country was already chaotic. It was going to get worse and worse and worse. And there's going to be some civil unrest. Okay, from my side, gentlemen, when it comes to soundtracks, there are a lot. I'm also like Mr. Said, there's a lot. I cannot, but Set It Off was one of those. Sarafina, as you all know, it's got a special place in our hearts of this generation, our generation, that is Sarafina, because when we were growing up, it was still showing and stuff like that. And then there's another movie that I like very much, which is called Shawshank Redemption. I don't know how many times I've watched that movie. I remember from the first song, If I Didn't Care. And then it's about that gentleman. No, I can sing. Andy Dufresne. His name is Andy Dufresne.
Yay!
Sure did.
So this guy's name is Andy Dufresne. He gets arrested for something he didn't do, but it was difficult to prove it. But he was in prison for the longest time. But one thing that movie taught people about is hope. Hope from the human spirit. That is what Xhanti said. You've got hope. You are going to do something about this thing. Yes, it's bad at the moment, but I need to do something about it. Eventually, something will happen. One day, litota duve. So yeah, that movie teaches you about hope as a human being, that you should always hope for better situation, hope for better days. So yeah, it's the same thing in life. You always need to have hope, and also do something about the hope, because people hope sometimes, but they don't do something about the hope. You need to push the hope as well. Okay, here's my hope, but I need to push it as well on the side, not just hope and hope and hope. So yeah, that's it from my side in terms of the soundtracks. Gentlemen, I would like to thank you very much. I don't know if somebody wants to comment about something. I enjoyed the episode, even though I was a bit nervous in the beginning. I don't know why. I think I was thirsty for some liquids, water. So yeah, my cream ties are pulled through. It was nice. Yeah. Yeah. So
Why are
I
you
don't know.
mentioning water?
No, I didn't drink water earlier on today, so that's why I'm mentioning water. We need water during these times. Okay. I don't know if somebody wants to say something.
I just wanna say, man, just in terms of the soundtracks that on the last point that we were talking about, if we remember I'm gonna use an analogy where I'm gonna say if you remember or if you know the struggle songs that were sung by our people during that time, either when they were marching or either when they were protesting against that government of that time, you know what it's like when you a group of people, and when that struggle song comes and you sing, it does something to you, man. We all know about it. It does something to you. And I think the struggle songs that we had, they were very instrumental in terms of driving the movement for our people to be free. It's always been about those songs. Those people were not just marching quiet. They were taking the government on, and they were singing these songs with so much emotion. So I think the struggle songs that we had, they had a very, very big part to play for us to actually be where we are today. There's a lot of struggle songs that we all know.
Yeah.
And once someone it all starts with one person. The one person starts, and then it just becomes like a chain of command, and then it just becomes like a one unison thing, and then it just drives people forward. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is a beautiful thing. I think it's because of togetherness. Like if you're singing one song, you feel like you're in this together, even though you're together. And I think it's also part of our culture as South Africans, like to sing, to express the way we feel, not necessarily talk about it, but sing about it and march towards a common goal. Yeah, I just wish we can always keep it like that. Any last take from your side, Aquila?
Look, we're faced with, as a people, young people, we're faced with big challenges, poverty, inequality, joblessness. So I think it's important that we continue to fight these problems as Snazo. We continue to look to do more, to get our people out of these the same way that the youth of 1976 and before did. So kaske ibezi izinto that we continue to talk about so that zizohlala zikhona empilweni zethu zingalityalwa ngabantu. Continue to fight these things, because man, we've got a long way to go. We've got a long way to go. We need to look at these things and fight and fight these problems as now. So we need to have better leadership, be more organized. Thankfully, to communicate seems to be easier. Be better organized and fight against so that Abanbe to Shem can prosper. Those now the
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Cruz. X, your final thoughts, and then we close off.
Thanks, Obzane. First and foremost, let me just thank the opportunity once again that the platform that you've created for discourse to engage young people so that we can shape this country, shape this thing going forward. You see, the reality is that when now, Paula, the leadership of the world is getting young. And it's upon young people to rise in taking themselves serious and the governance structures serious by occupying them. We cannot be led by old people who have no clue, none whatsoever, in terms of what we want as young people. When policy are formulated, it cannot be formulated in our absence in the name of Banga Baba. There was consultation that we don't even know about. There's a youth policy that I can't, as a young leader, can't even speak off the cuff, but it's a government policy. So what I'm trying to say is that young people must not be apologetic about driving their own agenda in relation to setting up or setting the tone that government must take or the governance structures must take. So in those few words, normally it is that, but we need to own this thing. We need to ensure that we change this thing from look, for the lack of a better word, we can't be controlled by dinosaurs here. You know, I just have a flair for words on this part, but it cannot be that we're being led by people who have no clue, none whatsoever, that what we want as a transitional generation, you see. So it's very important, it becomes important that Abantu Abatsha must set up their own agenda and ensure that no one tells them how to do things other than themselves. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, X. Okay, gentlemen, I cannot say anymore. Yeah, he's correct. We need to lead, because people are very close to the grave. They don't know how some of these things are going to impact us in the future. You know, they don't care. Okay, I'm done with my race. Now they can do whatever. I'm done. Whatever. Okay, gentlemen, I would like to thank you all once again for honoring the request to come and share your experiences and your thoughts with us here. I'm sure we'll do another, I think, in future in terms of these episodes. There are many subjects that we need to address. Also teaching young men, young girls how to lead, and also teach ourselves how to lead and learn from others on how to lead. Because the important thing is leadership. We need to show leadership and march forward. Okay. So I would like to thank you guys for being on the episode with us tonight. All of you. Thank you very much. And to the audience, thank you very much. Please subscribe, share, subscribe on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, like, comment, share at opholamedia all across the board. TikTok, wherever. Aquila likes dancing to TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Yeah, those are the ones that I can think about. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers. Hey, X same deal, Matot. What did you say? Finalized. Okay, recording is done. X is gone. We X same time.
It's a recorded. Pause it.
No, I just stopped the. I know I stopped the recording.